Come on, let's hear it for our panel here on stage.
Thank you so much. Friday evening, we are almost, 10 minutes away from 6 o'clock. Hopefully, this will be a good adda session, like we say in Bengali. And, we are here to talk about a kind of leadership that you will not find in textbooks. But it's felt in every room, in every Zoom, and in every boardroom. So, the authentic ascent, excuse me for my bad voice. The topic, as you know, is the authentic ascent leading with vulnerability and strength. And it's a wide topic. I've tried to condense it in two parts. And I think it's not just a theme, it's a mirror to how leadership is evolving. We are no longer applauding leaders who never flinch. We are, in fact, admiring the ones who can hold space for ambition and empathy, for resilience and softness. Today we have with us 4 phenomenal leaders who embodies this particular theme. They've taken on uncharted terrain, not by armoring up, but by showing up fully. So here we go. Like I said, that I've tried to divide it in 2 parts, the personal lens and the leadership lens. So we'll start with the personal lens, and I'll start with you, Kinnari. You've had to reimagine a legacy brand in the digital age, a space that can be ruthless and fast-paced. Can you share a moment where things were slipping and it was your vulnerability, not just strategic acumen, that helped you course-correct?
Hi, thank you, Pritha, and thanks for everybody to having me here. See, when you take over a brand, a legacy brand, as large as Shemaroo, the burden of the brand and the legacy is so huge that you are always on the edge and making sure that you're not denting the brand. I think one of the most vividly remembering, I actually, going back 5 years, I didn't start as the business head at Shemaroo. I led the product and tech function for the ODD business. So I think what I, recall very well is, because it's a legacy brand, and we had this huge tech migration at that point in time. So that was this instance where we started, one of our servers crashed and we lost a lot of data, right? So at that point, you are heading a product tech function for a legacy brand. There's media, there's users who think, how can a legacy brand enter a digital world? Arey, inko to nahi aata, ye to bahut purane hai. Versus you have the Netflixes of the world where you're saying, oh, we are better off there. So that burden of the server crashing, I think that was very vulnerable at that point. And I said, okay, instead of going back into solutioning, we just inform the stakeholders and saying, yeah, okay, we've been here, we've had a crash, we've lost data, and we need time to figure this out. But having said that, we'll make sure that things get back into control, right? Then you go out into your team, you talk to people and you say, okay, this is where we are, right? Let's separate the who from the problem and let's get to the solution. So at that point, you are kind of humanizing the whole thing, and you're getting people to work together. I think that's where we went ahead and solved it, recovered it at a pace faster than probably was laid out, because I think we got together and worked as one huge team.
Okay, thank you for sharing that story. I'll move on to Prachi. Advertising world thrives on perception and pressure. Have you ever walked into a room and then, led from a place of uncertainty, and how did that shift the dynamics of the room or the work?
So, I'd also just like to say great questions, by the way. So, thank you for that. Uncertainty, there were many such instances. I think the one that I'd probably pick is running a digital agency in the time of COVID, because the only advertising that was going out was digital, but at the same time there was no money in the market. So nobody could pay us, we couldn't pay our teams, we couldn't pay our colleagues. And so how do you manage a P&L while taking a decision of not to let go of people? And you're responsible at that point, not just for your own being and sustaining your house, but that of so many people who are a part of your organization. So I think at that point in time, the only thing that kind of stood by us was being honest with our entire team in terms of how we're going to structure the payouts. We committed to them at the very beginning, very transparently, that we don't know how we're going to do this, but what we do know is we're not letting people go, right? So that was the only assurance at that time that we could give them. We weren't certain when were we going to be able to start paying them, because at that point in time, even companies, corporates, we're a service industry, so we rely on retainers coming in, and when that is not happening, you can't kind of assure anyone in terms of monetary compensation. So that honesty and openness really helped in any of the conversations that we had, keeping them updated throughout. And even if there were pay cuts, what was the pay cut going to be? It wasn't like a closed door conversation just with the leaders. It was a very open. We got like 300 of our teams on the call and just told everyone the structure in the same way. And because it's also, I think what the sentiment was, sab kaam to kar rahe the, because everybody was in overdrive, right? We had no life. We were working 12 hours a day, especially when you're a digital agency. I remember being on calls trying to explain to marketers who had never done anything in digital and trying to explain to them, okay, this is how we can list you on e-commerce, or this is what we can do considering you're an essential product. So everyone was figuring out that as we go. So you're putting in the hours, but you have no money to show for it. And then, of course, it settled over a period of time. But that in its own self, I think, being open, transparent, and vulnerable as a leader gives everyone the assurance or the confidence that they're not getting fooled over or there's no terms and conditions apply. And I think that's kind of what the evolution of leadership is. I remember earlier, I've been fortunate to be in a startup from the beginning, very, very open with everything. But I remember stories in advertising where nobody knew what was going on, in the boardrooms, or what kind of commercials were being cracked, or what deals were going on, or what the business state of business was. So that's a dramatic shift from then to now. And this was one such instant where you kind of just own up to the reality and the facts and take it as you go.
I still face that. I lead the marketing function at Havas India, which has 25 entities, and the name of the mother brand is Havas India. And I recently met somebody and said, so I said that, oh, I work with Havas. So I said, oh, you work with Havas Media. So I said, no, India. So this person was like, what is India? So I feel what you are saying. I'm still struggling to introduce all 25 agencies to each other and then introduce them to the rest of the world. So thank you for sharing that. Shwetal, coming to you, Polycab is a brand associated with infrastructure and systems. How do you bring your full self, both the strategic head and the emotional heart, into a space that isn't traditionally considered emotive?
Yeah. Good question, Pritha. So Polycab, for all you know, that we play an important role in building the nation. We literally, in real terms, wire the nation, right from wires, cables, and all of that. And plus, there's also an entire FMCG set where it comes to house wires and your switches and fans and all of that, right? Fairly male-dominant industry, not only from people, but it's also from purchase decisions point of view. And influencers also play a very important role. And when I mean influencers here, these are not the Instagram influencers. Influencers who influence you in your purchase decision, which is your electricians, your contractors, your architects, your interior decorators. Because there are certain pieces that even when you're doing up your home, and when there's an electrician who comes and tells you कि madam ये wire नहीं ये wire लगाएंगे, it's blind faith. Because we don't understand that, right? So that's the industry where it is. And, but when it comes to bringing your full self into these conversations, it's very important to have a strategic approach and an emotional approach, both. And that's the beauty of marketing, communication, and brand. Products are technical, and there is a strategy. You need to work in terms of at an overall level to help the organization achieve what they need to do, and those numbers and all of those things are also important. But how do you really get an emotional balance to it? And that's where your full self comes in. It's never an either or. It's a balance that you maintain between the two. And that the best way to do it is put yourself in that consumer's shoes. Understand that consumer's problem. And then build an emotional connect out there. Right? For example, when it comes to wires. One, the way to do it is just a functional product, wire hai, wiring ho gaya, ye bachta hai. But then the other way to put it up is saying that, hey, listen, you spend so much of money and effort on everything that's visible to you. You'll spend money on that AC, on those lakhs of interiors and crores of money on all of that. But you never thought about that little wire which keeps all of this safe and keeps even you safe. So it's all about how do you translate and get that emotional quotient in. Whether it is your fans or anything, right? Even when it comes to lights. The way I see lighting, one way it's functional where it's doing its job. But have you ever noticed that every home that you go to, the lighting is very different? There's nothing called a right or wrong out here. And literally, the way you light up your home and even which lights are on in your house, whether while watching television or whether you're doing this, it's actually a representation of your identity. Have you ever thought of that? Yeah? So it's all about how do you connect with that end consumer, how much do you know the consumer, and then bringing that emotional connect in where you balance all of this together. And I think as women, we are blessed with a very high EQ, so it comes naturally to all of us. Plus, at an organization level also, it's very important to have that EQ very high in terms of what you're delivering to the society, what you're bringing back to the society, how you're taking care of all of that, right? So even when it comes to electricians and contractors, what are their pain points? How are you really addressing them? Let me give you an example. When it comes to electricians, there's no very formal training. At the same time, a doctor, when you go to a doctor, you'll blindly believe in whatever he tells you. There's no questions asked. ये गोली खाना है, आपके nerves में problem है, heart में problem है, बाबा panic attack, जाओ करो and you need to follow it. No questions asked because he's an expert. Some point of time, you're doing the same thing with an electrician also. Yeah. Have you ever thought that? But here you're giving respect, here you're treating him like a laborer. Imagine how does this electrician feel? There's no formal training, right? So he's learning from an ustadji from there, and he has his own vulnerabilities. So we've in fact started we've identified these nuances and what really work for them. We've started these entire courses called Utkarsh where we train them. We work towards helping them gain that respect, right? Right from insurance to a lot of things that we do from a community perspective. So as a marketer, one is your product, but also bring in EQ in terms of understanding whose lives are you really impacting and working towards it. Yeah. And as I said, as women, I think EQ comes to us naturally.
That was really insightful, I would say, Shwetal. Shwetha, now coming to you. Fintech can be both exhilarating and overwhelming. What's one situation where owning your vulnerability, whether in a team or a business decision, made you a better leader and not a weaker one?
Not just fintech. I think the way the world is moving, with more and more Gen Z entering the workforce, I think vulnerability and strength becomes very, very critical because Gen Z is challenging the way that all of us look at work, right? The way they think about work is completely different. The ethos that, millennials and above, some of us carry, it is extremely, they come with a very opposing point of view. They break every myth about the workforce, right? Whether it's, some of us millennials have a certain value system, if the boss says you have to do it. Yeah. I don't think most of us have ever aggressively challenged our bosses. But the younger kids, they do not hesitate to take you on. Some of us are available on weekends. If somebody messages, if there is an email, we do respond to it, right? Gen Z is very clear. They have these strong boundaries when it comes to work-life balance, getting calls, emails after work, getting work on weekends, right? All of that requires a certain kind of vulnerability. It's not just fintech. It's not industry specific, right? Across categories, across industries, this is a common phenomenon. When I talk to peers, right, everybody is kind of figuring out how to, there is sort of a reverse mentoring that the Gen Z is doing with all of us in terms of boundary setting, in terms of work-life balance, and there is a lot to learn there, right? And that doesn't come if you are a very conventional boss, right? It's never going to work out, right? Because this is going to be a way of life. As we move up the ladder, you are going to manage all these people in their 20s, early 20s. That's the pattern. People are, working for 3-4 years, then taking a break, and then doing their MBA. So people are entering the workforce after their bachelor's and coming in, right? So in that case, you have to be ready for, I have had people who have said, hey, my cat is not well, I'm taking the day off. I stay alone, I need to get my washing machine fixed, so I want some time off. Somebody says, I partied last night, I have a hangover, can I work from home? I've heard all kinds of things that, used to shock me initially. Saying, I have never been able to go tell my boss, hey, I woke up with a hangover. Can I take the day off or can I work from home? I have a bad headache. But, as the years pass by and you work with all these people, you understand that they are being vulnerable, right? It's very easy for them to say, hey, there's a family emergency, you know what, I am really sick, I have 103 fever, right? The fact that they are being vulnerable and they are speaking the truth, saying that, hey, my cat is not well, it might be something trivial to you, but if they are being vulnerable, you cannot help but respond with a similar kind of vulnerability. Give them a safe space. A lot of these people come from other cities, work in Bombay. Difficult for them to adjust. For some of them, in my team, it's the first job. They've never worked before. They're coming in a city like Mumbai. So that takes a lot of strength because they lean on you on some level to set a sort of an example without being that conventional, carrying that conventional boss demeanor, saying, hey, I am your senior, so you watch what you say. They are going to challenge you. They are going to constantly disagree with you. They are going to push back. They are going to take time off. They are going to set those kind of boundaries. So creating that safe space for them in every sense of the word is very, very important. Giving them that space, saying, whatever your reason is, up to a certain point, right? This is a safe space for you. That's the only way they're going to work. So, yes, that's something that I have done with my team, where it is a safe space. You don't operate from a space of ego, saying, how dare you speak that way to me, and how dare you disagree with me. You can't have that demeanor. So my team, especially across all the organizations I worked with, I make sure that people have a voice, even if they are young, even if they do not come with experience. If they have a point of view, then hey, please go ahead and express it. It starts with little things like that. That's vulnerability, but that's also strength.
Thank you so much. And on that note, I would like to share, I wouldn't say funny, but 2 very insightful stories for us. Also, it was like a learning. There was this very young, very bright boy in one of the agencies, and suddenly one day he put in his papers, and we did not know why, and he didn't leave for another job. And the management, his manager, HR kept talking to him because we really wanted to retain him. So we went back with a higher package, promotion, but the boy said, no, I just want to move on. And after a lot of effort and coaxing in one of the exit interviews, he said that he was quitting because bosses talk only about work during lunch. That was his reason. And he said that, no, I don't want to discuss work during my lunch break. And so that was quite insightful for us. We did a study last year. It was one of our global studies on Gen Z, which said that they are perhaps not as emotionally resilient as the earlier generations. So I asked one of my strat heads that, okay, fine, we have this study, tell me how brands can use it. So he said, okay, and in a joking way, he said that, okay, suppose if it's an automobile brand, they can say that, okay, take more breaks. Take breaks more often because, you know, you need to reset your emotional balance. And that's a way to, you know, target or whatever, reach out to the Gen Zs. So thank you for sharing that. So now we move on to the second part of our discussion, which is looking at this topic from a leadership lens. Kinnari, I'll once again start with you. As a woman leading a digital content platform in a highly dynamic space, how do you model emotional honesty for your team without being stereotyped or second-guessed?
I think as soon as you start leading a team, you know, you're stereotyped on day one, right? You've been questioned, is she too soft? Is she too strong? Is she aggressive? Is she decisive? So everybody, you know, 360-degree eyes are watching you. But over these years, you know, what I have personally found, as much as you know, you feel the same, I think my male counterpart also feels the same. So it's not gender defined to a point. If a male gender is taking over the team, I think he's also being looked at. So I think we women end up judging ourselves a lot, right? I think we should stop it at that point in time, right? And the question about saying, and I think we are emotionally inclined for sure. I think that's the time you turn that into a strength, right? As much as you own up your wins, your roadblocks to your team, the male members of the team will also own it back to you, right? There are things that you know, I have personally done, walked a mile where you know, to make it sound that there is gender equality, right? I have taken over all men teams so many times in my career, especially when I've led tech roles. We've seen a lot of, you know, low amount of women in STEM fields. So at times you have, right? So I have gone to the roadside tharra also, saying, having dinner with them just on the name of team bonding. So you have to go that extra mile for sure. So you then turn up your emotional, you know, your emotional EQ into a strength by talking equally, talking their language. And the more open you are, the more open they are back to you. So you're technically creating a safe space both for men and women alike, you know, where they can discuss, right? Like, for example, over lunch, like you mentioned a while back, in an all-men team, they're all talking about their wives at home, right? So I think my husband has most benefited out of that because I know the kind of troubles through the men's eyes, and he's like, okay, fine. I think your all-men team is helping me back home. I'm not getting the same rat back. So I think, yes, and while you create that safe space, you are not losing. You're making sure that people are, you know, accountable, they deliver. Right, so that doesn't go anywhere. But yes, if they are not, you have to stand up. You've got their back, right? And it's important to deliver as a team. So I think that's where it is, right?
Thank you so much. Prachi, I'll come to you. You work with young creators. You were just talking about the lockdown situation and how you kept them motivated. And strategists, so young creators and strategists every day, what kind of leadership culture do you consciously nurture to make sure they can bring in their most authentic self to the table?
So I think, I mean, luckily I belong to a field where I've usually been the youngest, at least when I started off. So we were a bunch of kids trying to figure out how digital marketing works. That graduated to becoming, you know, business head, when then you're sort of in your late 20s and you're figuring out how to be in you know, lead conversations with CMOs and CEOs and heads of marketing and media, etc. And you're trying to figure that out. while still leading. My average age at one point in time in the organization was 24. And that's across 200 people. So you can imagine, we were very, very young. Then it came to a point where I was amongst the older people in the company. And then now I recently switched to Publicis, and now again, I'm the youngest in at least my peers. But again, the organization that you are and in the field that we're in, that's always going to be the case. It's always going to be spirited and fueled by the youth. That's what it demands. So I think some of the things that I've learned over the course of my time being a leader, and what's always been beneficial or useful to me in these situations, is you treat it with a good sense of curiosity. I think as an individual, and I can have my own personal opinion about how Gen Z works or doesn't work, or what I feel about their work ethic or lack thereof. I think those are, of course, that's my individual opinion and my reaction as a human being and as a boss to them. But when I am in the capacity of their leader, the thing that I always hold on to is curiosity, right? So I do this. I mean, I've been doing this throughout, but being connected to them, whether it's over a couple of drinks or it's over lunch, who's dating who, is your house falling down, is your cat sick, like all of these conversations, just being interested in their life. And I think that teaches you a lot about where they're coming from, what are they worried about, when are they going to switch to their next job, what's triggering them to switch, who's at home, these things. I think regardless of age, but especially with the youth, you need to be sensitive about this, because a lot of them are first jobbers or second jobbers. They're figuring out their way in the world, as she had also mentioned. So that takes a lot of their mind space, and you want to be curious about it and understand where they're coming from. Now, especially when we're at a phase in life, in the industry, where Gen Zs have now finally become the consumers. They finally entered the workforce as well, and they're also picking up a lot of their own bills, and they're spending, they have disposable income now. So even now as marketers, we are responsible for selling to this generation while working with this generation. So you need to kind of, I do, for instance, regular catch-ups with a bunch of the kids who are in my agency. And I'll say, okay, you want to welcome new people, you figure out how do you want to welcome people into the company. You think what we do is boring, completely fine. This is why I need to do these things. These are the criteria you need to follow in terms of like budgets, and in terms of, it should be able to be, you should be able to replicate it in Bombay, in Delhi, across offices, etc. Okay, then y'all figure out, y'all tell me what's going to be interesting and exciting for you. For instance, when you just enter the organization, or for rewards and recognition. Because clearly if you give any one of us when we were younger, and the millennials, you give me a 5,000 rupee Amazon voucher as a reward, I'm going to be very happy. But if you're not finding that interesting, tell me why and tell me what you want instead. So a lot of these things help them be also see you as a different person, because they're like, okay, cool, she's at least ready to listen. And then you kind of explain to them where you are coming from, and then you find middle ground. So very often, even when it comes to ideas that we take to clients, right? A lot of times, let's say I'm working on a makeup brand or a beauty brand, and the idea of beauty has evolved so much since my mother to me to like now these guys, that you have to keep up with the thought process and what's important. So it's useful in running the team. It's useful in also working with the team and creating different ideas that can work for campaigns and such. And that brings about a whole new set of understanding. Like right now, one of the challenges I'm facing is, back in the day when you wanted to get to know your team, you took them out drinking. It was like, yeah, cool, let's go, let's celebrate. Either you have a great campaign, could be any reason to go hang out. More and more people in my team don't drink anymore. It's a very conscious decision to not consume. I mean, great and fantastic. But then there are enough and more reports which say that the reason that this generation is making that choice is because they just don't want to socialize. And we need to question us, because they've spent so much they were all in college in COVID, right? Where did we as a generation, you start partying and socializing when you're in college? These guys have done college over the internet. So they are so unfamiliar and to a certain extent disconnected with this concept. Now team building has to look different. We have to rethink the way we begin to trust each other. You know, we have to rethink the way we confront each other. A lot of the times, I remember when you're a account manager and you don't get along with your creative guy, you kind of get it out at the office party and you're like, you know what, this is my problem with you. And you get over it and then you move on, and you get back to work the next day and you're like, yeah, cool, we're all cool. Ab kya kare? Like, how do you address, how do you confront? They don't want to confront, they don't want to socialize. So I can challenge it and question it as an individual. But how do I then motivate them and try to get them to be more comfortable, more out of their shell? That's the evolution. But the only way to kind of be on that journey is to be curious and to be curious consistently. Because I think this is also a mistake I see a lot of people make, is that you can be curious in the canteen, but then you also need to be curious in the boardroom. If they are making those mistakes, you need to understand why they're making those mistakes, or why they're not up to certain tasks, or refusing to take up certain kind of projects. So that has to continue, and you have to extend that support, because only then are they going to truly be open and vulnerable and be listening to you at least. Otherwise, I feel like they're just going to tune us out as leaders, because if you can't pay attention to me regardless of whether we're socializing or we're having a work conversation, then it kind of defeats the purpose. And it's also that as marketing, we're in such a subjective field, it very often becomes, I think this idea is not going to work, but you think this idea is going to work. Then how do we agree? Because I am in the position of being the leader. You have written the idea, but is that something that, how do we maneuver that conversation and test? And then, so these conversations are always fueled by curiosity and honesty. That's what has been my lesson.
Thank you. Shwetal, moving on to you. When you're at that intersection of business pressure and brand purpose, how do you decide when to pause, reflect, and let people see the real you? And, even if it means admitting that you're figuring things out.
It's always a tightrope. Yeah?
Yeah.
And it does happen very often. One is where I'm here today, but even my previous experiences when you were in retail and other organizations. There's always a business pressure, there's always the environment pressure, there's always about performing now, and it's that immediate 2 days or the 1 month objective versus a long-term objective, which is a brand purpose. You know what, it's very easy to come under pressure. And as marketeers, you'll always find multiple temptations around to kind of diverge and make that change. But what I've realized over a period of time, it's okay to be vulnerable. And it's absolutely okay to be vulnerable. And being vulnerable, the way I see it, it's not a weakness. In fact, it's your strength. Because when you're being vulnerable, and when especially there's a lot of noise in your head and you're not able to think through, and when you go back and ask for help, when you go back and tell your team, saying that, hey, seems like things going wrong, or maybe not the right decisions, and we need to rethink. Or when you're going and telling your seniors the same stuff, and you're showing your vulnerable self, I just feel that it's very human. They see the human side of it. They see the authentic side of it. It allows you to bond better and find the right solutions. As an organizations, also in my experience, the right leaders will see it as somebody who's human and somebody who really cares for the organization, rather than taking those knee-jerk and rough decisions, who's really one very responsible. And this is a time, what I've always done, I've gone back to the why and what's the real purpose. So I've paused, and this entire thing also allows you to pause. So you pause, you reflect back, and you go back to your core strategy or the core brand purpose in terms of what really you are set to do here. And whether these things fall in place, whether you're doing it because you've been forced to do it, or whether it is aligning with your larger objectives. And this is a time it's okay to say no. It's okay to relook. It's okay to reflect back. And then jump back, because then you really are able to lead with confidence and authenticity.
Okay, thank you. And coming back to you, Shwetha, you deal with numbers. Once again, I'll come back to that. Conversations, performance metrics. How do you create emotional safety in such an outcome-driven environment? And how has that shaped team performance or innovation? I think you touched upon it in your earlier answer.
Yes, specifically when it comes to performance, you need to be 100 transparent and give that feedback regularly. That's something that we did not receive when we started off in the workforce. Appraisals used to be an annual feature. But now, in terms of giving feedback and how you're giving feedback in a outcome-based industry, like you said. Of course, every industry is an outcome-based industry. But specifically, transparency, specifically in terms of telling them very, very clearly. One thing with younger people is to be able to tell them clearly, hey, these are your 5 goals, right? There is a certain kind of specific input that needs to be given. We can't use motherhood statements that, have been going around for donkey's years. You must innovate, right? Stuff like that. We have to be very, very clear saying on this creative idea, this is what I'm expecting, right? That kind of, being specific and maintaining that throughout, without changing the goalpost too often, right? That helps a lot in terms of monitoring performance, where you're having the discussion with them, saying, hey, where do you want to be, right? Earlier it used to be, hey, the boss telling you, hey, do these 5 things and this is what you'll be gold on, right? And that used to be like a big premium. But here you co-create those goals with the employee, saying, okay, these are the things that we need to do, but what do you think you want to do? Is this something you're comfortable with, or do you want to do something else, right? So a lot of people in my team have come back and said, I like doing this, I don't like doing this, I would like to do something else, I want to do a stretch assignment and pick that up, right? When that open conversation is there, when it is not a one-way conversation, you're co-creating the goals, you're co-creating that career path based on their aspirations. That makes a huge difference in measuring that performance. So it can't be a situation where you're saying, I have told you and you need to do this. Unless you are also keeping them accountable and giving them the gear. You might have the steering wheel, but allow them to change gears in between, saying, okay, this is not something I'm enjoying. Because people do come back and say, hey, this is not something that I enjoy. Then you go back and have that conversation, meet each other halfway, right? So one of my team members who had a very creative bent of mind in social media said, I like ideating and I like writing copy, but I don't like measuring and I don't like creating reports. But the point is, every social media manager has to create reports. You can't wish that away, right? So you need to have that conversation saying, listen, you know what? 60% of your job or 70% of your job is creative. But at times, you have to do few things that you don't like. You are not going to have something that is 100% up your alley, right? And then you give examples from your own career, saying, these are the things that I liked. But of course, there were things that I did not like, which I had to do. And you must do that, right? And then you kind of help them, handhold them. The point is, when they say they don't like, it is usually something that they do not know. Yeah. So you need to be able to identify that, okay, maybe this person doesn't have Excel skills, or maybe this person does not know how to represent numbers. So then you go down and say, listen, the first 2-3 reports, I'll work with you, right? We'll sit together and make the report. And then you're on your own. So that's the, when it's performance driven and when it's outcome driven, then those are the kind of things that have worked for me. Of course, it takes a lot out of you sometimes to, meet them halfway, get them to have that buy-in and come halfway, right? Understand that they are not going to be able to bring in 100% every single day, right? Some days they are at 60%, some days they are at 70%, whatever, right? But to be able to hold their hand up to a certain distance and also know when to leave their hand, because that also is important. Saying, hey, okay, do not micromanage me, give me autonomy, give me power, right? Trust me enough so that I can do my job. So knowing when to hold hands, knowing when to let go, knowing when to hold the steering, knowing when to let go, all of that helps building that performance. And constant feedback in terms of this is what you're doing right, this is something that needs that improvement, rather than waiting till the end of the quarter or end of the year, right? Fail fast, feedback early. Those are the things that work for me.
Thank you so much. And before I wrap up, any parting thoughts on the topic, probably authentic ascent, or anything that you would like to add?
I only want to say one thing. We all should stop judging ourselves.
I would say evolution is the only way to keep on being authentic. You need to be open to it and mindful of it, and that's the way you can continue to be your authentic self, no matter how you go along.
Yeah, if you're honest to your own self, you really don't need to judge yourself. You don't need to put up a face. And authenticity and confidence comes on its own.
I think one important part of vulnerability, authenticity, is also being able to speak your truth and your story, right? So in terms of sharing snippets about your personal life, your state of mind, right? That is also something that we should be open to. And I think that brings in authenticity, saying, listen, you know what, I have a bad headache today, you run the meeting, right? Even something like that lets people know that, okay, my boss is also human, right? Rather than saying, you be vulnerable, but I'm going to be your rock, right? So it's symbiotic. There is a certain kind of reciprocity when it comes to authenticity and vulnerability. Otherwise, it's never going to be cohesive.
Thank you so much. I had a fantastic time hosting this. I'm taking away a lot from all four of you. And thank you for being such a fantastic audience. Thank you, Bujvijaya, and the entire team at Adgully. Thank you so much.